Welcome to Spilled Ink.
Welcome to another episode of Spilled Ink. I am joined today by Curt Rindal, owner of Rindal Chiropractic and the best chiropractor I have ever worked with. I don't think I ever believed in necessarily a healer per se until I met you, Curt. And a session with you is kind of life-changing, truly. Not to, just sort of jump in and shower you with praise, but I'm so appreciative of the work that you do. So thanks for joining me today.
Wow, Mason, thank you for that intro. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here today.
And I guess, let's go ahead and dive right into the chiropractic side of things. How did you kind of find your way into this? And, what is it that draws you to it?
It was kind of like, I would say a longer journey than most, right? Where, if you look back at my history, my family, my dad's a chiropractor, two of my brothers are chiropractors, my uncle, my cousin. And so it all kind of ran in the family. And so it goes way back. But I mean, I grew up with it, right? I grew up with my dad treating me and working on anything sort of injuries that I had growing up. But then from a very, very young age, I'd say baseball, I played a lot of different sports, but baseball I kind of in eighth grade, I started to think more serious about it and stuff. And so, I was always trying to play as long as I could and get a chance to play at a higher level. And after doing that for a little bit, it was like, I got an economics degree from UW, right? I was going to go into finance. And I thought, man, I don't know if I want to lose all those contacts that I've had. I kind of want to be in that sports world again. And it just became super natural to like go into the chiropractic profession because I've been so familiar with it.
And I think that in that scenario, you could go one of two ways, right? You could either totally run away from it, or you could be like, oh, this is great. I love it. And outside of the family connection, what is it about being able to help people in that way that drew you to it?
Well, I think like I'd see my dad, like people would come over on the weekend, like hurting big time, and they'd come over to the house or he'd go into the office and we'd be with him or something. And these people were like crumbled walking in, and then he'd work on them for a little bit and walk out, and they'd be smiles and say hi to us and walk out. So I saw that growing up and I was like, wow, that was pretty powerful. His ability to just do that with his hands, right? And to figure out what needed to be worked on and how much that helped. And then throughout my career, I mean, there were a lot of instances where shoulder was killing me, elbow was killing me, or forearm from throwing or low back from swinging. And it was just always something that became more and more, the higher I got up, is like my dad and mom traveled to a lot of my different games and I'd have to get worked on, and it was really beneficial for me. And so when I got into the chiropractic profession, like when I was playing minor league ball, it was those ups and downs, of you're like, what in the world? I was on a hot streak and now I come to the ballpark and the ball looks like a marble. It used to look like a beach ball, and as I started to get closer to thinking like, man, okay, I think I'm ready to transition to what's next. I thought chiropractic seemed more natural. And I'm always been good at like, you teach me a technique, right? I can refine, I can get that feel of what needs to happen. And with chiropractic, it's the same thing. It's with those adjustments or what you're doing with the soft tissue, or you're trying to figure out what to do with this person individually. It was kind of like how I approached like sports and those types of things and grew. But I also realized it's not like I'm going to wake up the next day and I'm not going to remember anything about chiropractic care and have to start all over, like my swing sometimes too. So I was excited to transition to that. And I knew I had those resources like my brothers and my dad to kind of fall back on as I started out in this career.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you, where do you fall in your family? Are you on the younger side?
So I'm like right in the middle. So
Okay.
there's 5 kids.
Okay.
My sister's the oldest, and then my older brother, Kevin, and then me. And then I've got a younger brother, Brian, who's a chiropractor. Kevin's a chiropractor, and then my youngest brother, Eric. So I fall right in the middle.
Okay.
Probably that middle child sin, like, definitely,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so how, you talk about it seems because every person's different, right? How do you, because it really does seem that you're so in tune with everybody that you work with. And I only know that I have a small sample size myself and my wife. But how do you connect with people to be able to do what you do?
Yeah, that's something that's evolved. I graduated in 2012, so I've been doing this for almost 13 years. And I would say at the beginning, you come out of school and you're focused on like, okay, this person's coming in for a specific injury. You're focused on that area, and you develop these palpation skills of like really honing in on what's not feeling like it's moving, or what does this tissue feel like. And then that evolved into like, okay, what is this person's like? Where are they at mentally? Right?
Mhm.
Where are they coming in? Is that part of what's going on with their body too? And then it's just thousands of treatments. And then I've really been focused, I would say, the past like couple of years on learning some new techniques and really honing in on ability to connect, right? And to understand what this person's dealing with and learning some new skills. And over time, it's like these hands kind of go to the spot right away. They're telling
Mhm.
you what's going on. And sometimes it's the area that they're talking about. Other times I just have this feeling of like, well, that's it, but let's take a look at this and this as well. And I think as I progressed through this last 13 years, it's like, okay, how do I every year bring something new to the office, right? Something that benefits the patient from,
Mhm.
whether that be like some sort of muscle release or something. And then what's another new technique? And these techniques kind of find me at the right time,
Mhm.
and then that's kind of being able to continue to hone in those skills. And I really do feel like things are all kind of falling in the right place right now, as to where like when people come in, I'm seeing even more complicated cases than I saw obviously off the bat, because I've been able to treat different things over the years. And it might not be something that that patient originally came in for, but they'll ask, "Hey, what do you think? Do you think you can work on this?" And not all the time is that the case, but it's really fun to kind of figure out like what's the root and how do we get after it, and then to see these results. It's of just like, I think it's more of, I'm just nudging the body in the right direction,
Mhm.
right? It just amazes me every day, the body's ability to heal itself, right?
Mhm. Do you have to be, I mean, like, how present do you have to be? Because that, to me, that's like so much of it, right? To feel, to let your hands do what they're doing, you have to be like, you can't have, like, your mind can't be wandering. Like, you have to be very present with each person.
And that's something my dad told me like really early on in my career. He's like, you might have a million things going on, but when that patient walks in the room, he's like, I have the ability to basically flip a switch and hone in on what needs to happen. And I think that, as I see more people throughout the day, or over the years, it's like understanding how to just really focus on, man, flip the switch from that patient that just finished to this new one, and understanding right away, just by the way that they walk in, their body language, how they're talking, and then understanding like, okay, I've seen this before, or this seems new.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that's why I work really intense 4 days a week down in Seattle. And then it takes me about a day to kind of get back on track, like on that day, Friday, where I'm getting caught up on everything paperwork wise. And then I can kind of relax over the weekend, because I think that takes a lot of effort for me to
Mhm.
basically be in that zone for that period of time. And then I have to find ways to kind of, get back down from it and get back on track.
Mhm. And you said something a minute ago that I made this pop into my head. You know, when you're talking about someone comes to you with something, and then you're like, oh, maybe it's that is that, and then also this. When you're working with an elite level athlete, Major League Baseball player, UW football player, anyone like that, how receptive are they to you saying, right, like their body is their livelihood, and they're like, this was what hurts, and you're like, actually, maybe this is what we need to work on. Does it take time to build trust, or do you find them being very receptive to it?
I mean, there's a bunch of different situations where I've come in and it's like, this guy's got to play right now. And is there anything that you can do to help? Or like the physicians are maybe asking, we're just throwing this at him. Like, let's see if there's anything you can do in those situations. Like, I really like to show the patient and have them kind of show me, hey, where is the pain? What movement creates the pain? And is there anything that causes it to feel better or worse? And so that we have a baseline as to like that patient knows like, this is when I feel it right here, right?
Mhm.
Especially elite athletes, they are very in tune with their body, right? And it might be like a conversation of where they're saying, hey, it's when I release the ball here at this moment is when it shows up and then it goes away. And whereas other individuals, it might be like, I don't know, Curt, it just hurts here. Can you take a look at this? And so I think trying to figure out how to relate with that person and show them like, okay, I understand where you're feeling the pain, right? If I can show them that I can either palpate and go over the area and say like, is this the spot that you feel it? And if they feel like, wow, he understands like at least where I know that the pain's coming from, right? And then kind of go through a range of motion to show them, hey, look at this right versus left. This maybe feels a little bit more restricted versus that. And then understanding, like telling them like, hey, this is what I think what we should do. And let's go after it. And then we'll retest again. I think that evaluate, test, retest approach, then you can kind of continue to tease things out versus me saying like, oh yeah, it feels better to me. You know, like, oh, the range of motion, it might feel better to me, but they don't understand that. And so I really think that they're in control of the treatment. And if they're noticing, like, yeah, that really cleared up. I don't feel it as much, or I feel it right here just a little bit. We clean that last little bit up in those cases. But it builds that the more I work on someone, you know, then the more I understand their body and get in tune with it. So if they don't come in for a while and they show up, it's like, I kind of have a really good idea of what I might sometimes miss their name out in public, right? But I could tell you what their injury was like a couple of years ago that we worked on.
Does it feel good? Like, do you, you know, when you've worked on an athlete and then you see them on the field doing what they do, does that feel good? Like you're like, oh man, you know, I was a part of that kind of.
Yeah, it's like I work on a guy, he hits his first home run or whatever, and you're like, man, I'm the man, right? And then he goes 0 for 20, and you're like, no, I didn't work on him at all. So I've kind of learned like to just even kill like the ups and downs. And that's what it's like, you know, I'm fortunate enough to work with some of these guys. It's a privilege. I'm honored to get to work with these guys. I'm very fortunate, or gals. Um, but at the beginning it was like, yeah, no, that I did that. And then after the realizing it and learning it over the years, it's like, I mean, I nudged some things in the right direction, but overall it was that player just doing his thing and getting back to who he really is or she is, you know? So maybe there's some wins that happen that I might tell my wife, hey, that was a win, or, but I don't, it's them doing their thing. Because I've gotten too high and too low.
Yeah, I think that's something anyone that works around athletes can probably relate to that, right? Like yeah, like we're all just a kind of a cog in the machine of you know, those guys doing what they do.
And there's so many different resources that they have, right? And we're all working together to just keep this machine going on this, you know, and get them as well as it can. So that's what's fun is I've been very fortunate to work with teams that have really good staff, right? And we all work really, really well together. And I've always just kind of stayed in my own lane, right? And focused on what I'm really good at and what I can bring. But understand at times, hey, this isn't, you know, I think there's something else, or you know, we need to focus on referring out or doing something like that.
Switching gears slightly, going back to your playing career. So you played at UW in the old baseball stadium, correct?
So yeah, we had the rector set bleachers, the porta potties. I mean, I think it was my junior year that we got the actual field turf. We had actually AstroTurf at the beginning.
Oh yeah, okay.
And the bases were cut out in the mound, home plate. But this was a period where we would spend the first 20 minutes of practice cleaning up goose poop because there's 50 geese on the field beforehand. And then we'd have to do sliding practice on that turf or in that, and it was just like cement. But still, it was such a great background, right? With the lake being right there and it being UW baseball and the history of some of the players that have been there. And it really didn't matter. We were just out there to just be fortunate enough to play at that level and stuff. Once they put that field turf in, once they started to get, I think we got bat warmers like my senior year for the bats. And that was a big deal too as well. But what they've done now is just a great place to play, I imagine, and it's beautiful. It's fun to watch there.
Yeah, I remember. You know Jeff Bechtold, right? Like you're. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Uh, so when I was a student, so I don't, when did you graduate?
My last year was '07.
Okay. So I graduated in '03. Um, and there were some, I worked with Jeff a few times in that press box. And the only thing that I remember about it is being cold and the hot diggity dogger.
I didn't find out about that till later. I was like, wait, he's cooking hot dogs up there and stuff.
Mhm.
He had a little setup, but I can't believe that little booth that he had to be in and all that. It was just no protection, barely,
Yeah.
cold and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And one day it was just like, this thing's coming down. It's just,
Yeah.
it was
Well,
like probably the one place, like,
yeah.
what's that?
It looked like scaffolding,
I mean,
that.
actually, I think it was like, I think it was literally that janky. And I think the two places on campus I wouldn't want to be in an earthquake is that press box, although that would have been safer than the old Husky Stadium press box, which I was convinced I was going to be in when that thing just like crashed
Exactly.
down. Yeah.
Yep, that was old too. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you remember most about, like what was your top moment playing for the Huskies?
I just think that that first time when like we go down to USC, right? Or you go down to Arizona State and you're like seeing the history of those two teams and thinking like, man, I'm playing here at this stadium on a Friday night.
Hmm.
And you're facing Ian Kennedy, right? And like this guy's got, and we didn't know how good he was at the time.
Hmm.
But I thought playing in the pack in those stadiums, UCLA, ASU, going down to Oregon State, I just thought at that time too there was a good amount of really good players that were there. Stanford and just all those campuses are beautiful, and it was
Hmm.
really fun at that time to come into those areas and the history behind even some of those coaches that have been there forever. And you're like, oh, whoa, that's that guy, you know.
Hmm.
So I think that playing in the it was a Pac-10 at that time, but I think that that all made it really fun to be in. And those were very competitive, very fun games to play.
Hmm. Is there, you mentioned Ian Kennedy, is there a player in either your college or minor league career that you're like, I can't believe that I was on the same field with that guy?
Stanford had a bunch of them, but there's a picture that my parents have. I mean, I'm almost 6'3". I was like 215, 220 when I played.
Mhm.
I'm at stand at first base. My parents have a picture. John Mayberry Jr.'s at first base too. And I just looked like nobody, and
Mhm.
these guys who played, but Um, there were a lot of good guys at that time, good hitters. But I would say like obviously I was there at UW at the time when Tim Lincecum was there.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay. Yeah.
I played with Timmy for 3 seasons. And I mean, when he came in, it was like we had fall ball, we had little weights, and then we started doing 2 days for fall ball. And everybody's talking about this Tim Lincecum. He wasn't very big when he was at his peak with the
Hmm.
Giants, right? But when he came to UW, it was like this guy's tiny, right? And then he brings it mid 90s with that devastating slider. It's just like, okay, we could see why he was the way he was. But
Hmm.
it was interesting to just see for those players now who are coming in maybe their freshman year. It's like the trend from going freshman to junior year of some of these guys. We had some pitchers who through like mid 80s, and then all of a sudden their junior year they're pumping mid 90s, upper 90s, and they get drafted in the sandwich pick. And
Hmm.
so it was those guys who just continued to improve, right? And didn't give up on their ability to continue to like take what they learned and continue to improve, and then you got a chance to go play big time.
It's fun. I remember I remember when Tim Lincecum was in high school and he played a game in Centralia, a playoff game, and he pitched. That was the first time I saw him pitch and was like, this guy is legit. And then afterward, it was like the same day as prom. So like after the game, there were like a whole set of limos like waiting to take all the kids back to, back up to up north. And it was like such a surreal moment. And then to see him kind of like through the years is very cool.
Yeah, I forget the game that who we were playing. I thought maybe it was UCLA, the game that he struck out 18.
Oh yeah.
there's 40 scouts in the stands, and I literally stood at first base for an entire game, and there were a couple slow dribblers and stuff, but we just watched what he was able to do. And then once he got into the big leagues in that short period of time, rise to the stardom, it was pretty impressive to see.
Yeah. Especially with that, unconventional style, everything about it was like, oh, is he going to hold up? He's so small. And then just to be as dominant as he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that period of time, I mean, San Francisco still loves him, right? They're
Mhm.
big fans of him, and just to see what he did with what, 3 World Series, 2 Cy Youngs, and 2 no hitters in that
Mhm.
time was fun. And I happened to be down in chiropractic school in San Jose when he was going through all that.
Oh, okay.
So we would head into the city, and I got to see him a few times and meet up with him. But it was like, Timmy's on the front of Sports Illustrated as a free. Is Timmy doing this in San Francisco? It
Yeah.
would be cool to see.
Yeah. That's one of the things that the two guys, I think, as someone who grew up a Mariner fan, that I was around at least in some way, shape, or form, was Tim and then Blake Snell. And I wish that either or both of them at some point had gotten to pitch for the Mariners. Like that would, to me, would have been really cool.
I know that's exactly right. Um, I think I don't know what they wanted, where they wanted to play, but it would have been pretty fun for them to get to experience that hometown, and for us
Mhm.
to see it too as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about over the years, the state of Washington, how many top baseball players it's produced is
Hmm.
pretty impressive. Especially with the weather and how much time we spend indoors practicing and those types of things. It is a really good spot to develop athletes for
Yeah.
baseball.
I mean, I was just reading the other day, they were talking about the Dodgers outfield and Michael Conforto, and I was like, I remember him when he was in high school. It is crazy how many guys, come through here. And I remember he didn't he ended up having some off the field stuff, but Josh Saleh, when I was covering preps, was like maybe the number one pick in the draft, something. Blake, all these guys. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I would even say that Washington, I spent some time in Florida and actually covered Eric Hosmer when he was in high school. And, the guys that have come out of Washington that I've been are just as good, which is crazy.
Yeah, we would have to. It was very unfair because the Dempsey had just been built, a couple years before.
Mhm.
So we would, in the winter time, to face live pitching, we'd go in. They drop the nets. There's no backdrop really. They didn't have
Mhm.
a backdrop, and we'd have to face live pitching in the Dempsey. And here you're trying to like time it to not have to face Timmy. And so I go up there one time and I was like, I'm going to sit on that breaking ball because I know he's going to throw it. And if I see it up, maybe I can do something with it. And so he throws 4 painted fastballs, or hits the paint, and I walk out of the cage. 3 strikes, I'm out. And so, man. So I go up there and I was like, well, I look foolish. He's probably not going to dump that. I was watching the next few players. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit fastball. I got to get my timing down. I got to start early and all these things. And he dumps 3 of those breakers. And I walk out of the, I'm like, he is so deep in my head right now. Like I'm out of it. Yeah.
That's crazy. It's such a great story. And I can I can picture exactly what the Dems how that would have been set up. Because I was in there when softball was using it
Oh,
like
yeah.
the exact same way. And it's definitely certainly not ideal for that.
No, we did. No, we practiced. They dropped the side nets and we'd practice full practice. There's some that's also the area that I in 2004 where I dislocated my elbow.
Oh.
And so that was like we were doing bunt drills and it was right before the season. And I was a sophomore, the freshman had just gotten yelled at for not hustling down to first during these bunt drills. And so I'm at first base and they bunted third, and this freshman is full tilt down the line. And a bad throw kind of took me across the line, and I caught it, and he collided with my elbow. And I just remember this feeling, and then I couldn't straighten it, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, shoot, this is done. And at the time, football was warming up, and they're getting ready to come onto the field, and I'm on my back. And Keith Gilbertson was the coach at that time, so he came over, and he's, patting me on the back, talking to me. But that was one of those injuries that, when that happened, I was a good 2 months where I was just trying to get back some of the range of motion, the swelling and all those types of things. But then my dad said, hey, you should just have your elbow checked, just make sure that as they relocated that at the hospital that day, if make sure that everything's moving the way it's supposed to.
Mhm.
And because I couldn't get past a certain degree, right? I still was missing about 15 to 20 degrees, and that's my bottom hand that I have to really have all that extension with. And so I saw a chiropractor over in Kirkland, and my mom came down because she's like, let's go take a look. And he's like, Curt, it's your radial head. Like I think your radial head isn't moving still when they set that. He's like, I think I need to adjust that. And I said, okay. And so he goes to straighten it, and he gets that thing set, and he adjusts that radial head, puts it into full extension. I dropped to my knees because I thought like I almost passed out, but I gained all that range of motion back right then. And that, and I went and saw him several times to just make sure. And we worked on it and we lasered and did all these things. And I think deep down that experience too was one of those like, whoa, like look at what at the right adjustment. I would have probably never, my dad would have checked it, but that really kind of sat as like, wow, look what you can do in a short period of time.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. So where did you play your minor league ball?
Uh, so I got drafted. My first season was in the Pioneer League in Helena,
Okay.
Montana,
Okay.
and that
Did you?
was like one road in, one road out. Like
Mhm.
everything that they talk about for minor league ball, that was it. Yeah,
Did you ever play in the California League by chance?
not California. Then I went to the Sally League, the South Atlantic League,
Okay.
East Coast, and that was, I mean, that's known for one of the worst bus leagues in all of minor league baseball. So we were on the bus a lot in that
Yeah,
league. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Stanton, Bumgarner, they were playing. We played against them. It was,
Okay.
and Bumgarner. I mean, I remember coming off this hot streak of facing Bumgarner, and it was like anything that was thrown to me was as big as a beach ball. And my first at bat, man, I hit one to left field, and they catch it right against the wall in left field. I was like, that should have been gone. But and then my next at bat, the ball seemed to get smaller. The third, I had like a bleeder single up the middle. And then the fourth one, he threw me a pitch. I'm like, I've never seen that pitch before. And so, but it was fun to be able to experience those times. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, I covered the California League in when I was living in Bakersfield, which is uh, the ballpark may have been, it wasn't quite as rough as the old UW ballpark, but it had a tin roof and in Bakersfield. So one the thermometer in the press box stopped working at 130. Like that's where it topped out. And so, sitting in there and there's air conditioning, but it can't do anything. But I say that to say that John Mayberry Jr. was in the Rangers system at that time. And so I watched him play. And who else was in there? Chris Davis
Oh yeah.
was the third baseman. And at the time, he had set a record for the longest hit streak in the California League. And so it was cool. It's like it's. And I'm sure that it's probably similar for you. You get to spend time around. I mean, obviously, you got to play with these guys, but just to see them, know them, and then see their careers is pretty cool.
There was this one time in Greensboro, South Carolina. That's where Giancarlo Stanton played. And we finished batting practice. I came down to the bench, and our roving like hitting coach was sitting there. And then they go hit, and Stanton, I mean, he did a round of five, and he hit it every place in the ballpark out of the park. And I go, hey, that's a pretty good swing, huh? That guy's pretty good. And that hitting coach was like, Curt, that guy will maybe be an all-star someday. But that was his first early time playing, and it was like now you see these guys develop, but their bodies are made for this too.
hmm
These guys are big, strong guys. But there's a
hmm
lot of guys who make it, who just continue to grind it out. Right? There's only so many of those superstars, and everybody else is kind of. It's amazing for them to be able to play up at that level, what it takes.
hmm Did you get to a point where it was just time to move on, or like what was that transition like for you?
I got drafted as a senior, so I was a little bit older when I got drafted, and then that was my second season. And again, in August of that year, I was kind of splitting time with this guy at first base. And August of that year, I got really hot. I had like a 14 game hitting streak, sitting like 430 with like 4 home runs. And then that 15th game, I didn't get a hit. I didn't play the next day. And I was like, man, that might be like the best I've got, you know? And at that point, I was starting to think, okay, do I want to kind of continue to do this or have the opportunity if they want me for 2 or 3 more years? Or I knew if I wanted to go back to chiropractic school, I had about a year of prereqs plus 3.5 more years after that. And so at the end of that season, and I talked to my dad about it, and I always wanted to kind of be at that point where, hey, I feel ready to be done and be able to move on and not regret anything. And so I kind of got to that point. It was hard because once you tell them you're done, you're done.
Mhm.
But I didn't have, I had to switch gears and kind of go into the whole, okay, now I'm going back to school again type thing. So I felt good about it, but still it's like it's hard to always say no and quit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember, I'm sure you know Braden Bishop,
Yeah.
another UW alum, and I remember seeing him. I had a really weird job. It was called the video room monitor, and this was after the Astros were cheating, and so they had people sit in the video rooms. Major League Baseball did to basically like make sure document any abnormalities, right? Um, and so I was in the Mariners clubhouse one day, and Braden walked in, and he was at UW when I was working there. And I had got to know his wife, Bree Ruiz, pretty well
Yeah.
on the women's basketball team. And so he came in, and we were chatting, and things were going pretty well. I think at the time he was, actually playing quite a bit for the Mariners. Um, and, and then like a season or two later, and it's sort of like I'm going to walk away, and I always hope for anyone that because so often you don't get to leave on your terms, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think baseball players, it's really hard. Like we tend to kind of hang on longer because you're like, man, I'm going to figure this out, this game, but it's a really challenging game to try
Hmm.
to figure all that out. And so it is hard. But it's impressive some of the guys who have continued who played longer careers or who's still in the game as coaches,
Hmm.
they're still at the major league level as coaches. Pretty cool.
That's the one thing I used to think I wanted to cover Major League Baseball, and I've been around T-Mobile Park, for a zillion years in all kinds of different capacities. But you have it is if you're playing 162 games a year, like this is your life, right? Like this isn't just, it seems to me anyway that there's more with a season and that many games, you just are so much time away from family and like that's it. Like that's what you're doing.
You're right. And those guys, that's, in 2022 is when I got asked to come in and do chiropractic care for the Mariners. And I remember just as it's revolved over the past 3 years, 4 seasons, it's like, wow, these guys show up at a certain time and they're there early and they're doing all this work for several hours to prep their bodies to get ready to just go out there and play the game. And I think I heard that in minor league ball about the hit hot streaks, right? And at the major league level, these guys just don't have these huge dips like you do in the minor leagues, right? They're able to control those big ups and downs, but also they're professional about, hey, that guy just made a good pitch. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to walk back to the dugout versus, oh, shoot, I should have swung at that or that was a bad call. I think their ability to spend several hours before the game to prep themselves and then to be professional even at the toughest times, because they deep down do believe I'm going to pull out of this.
Mhm.
I'm going to have a great season this next season or this season. I'm going to switch this up. And I think that's what you have to have with that is that mentality.
Mhm. And that's what people don't see, right? Like it's not just you show up at the ballpark and you play, right? It's like a full day
Hmm.
leading up to the game, right? Like they've already done a whole day's work, whether it's treatment or,
Yep.
practicing in the cage, like they've done all of that before, they even take the field to get ready for the game an hour or two before the fans even get there.
Right. And they do that because, like, let's say guys playing right field, it's slow, slow, slow. And then there's that moment where he gets beat, but he gets back in time, makes a great catch, tosses it in. And I know he's thinking deep down, like, I am so glad I made that catch right there. Like, that's the difference, though, is probably the prep component, and they're also very talented. But when they make those plays or they have that big hit, they feel like, okay, that was a great day. But
Mhm.
all that prep that went into it and understanding how at any point, they can be replaced or they can have an injury or it might all be taken away. But it's
Mhm.
hard to stay in that moment, right? Too, because it's a grind. 162 games, being away from your family. These guys get what, 3 days of paternity leave when they have a kid, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's the idea of, hey, it's only April. I might be hot or not. Hey, I got a long ways to go. I got to save some of it. That's why I think that 2020 season was unique, right? With such fewer games, how everybody just went full tilt because they
Yeah.
knew like we only have so many games and we can do that. But now these guys have to kind of like pace themselves.
Mhm. Well, I would love to talk to you all day about this stuff. This has been so great. Zoom is kicking me off in any second now. I'll have to have you back because we didn't even get to tell. I'm sure you had some stories that we didn't even get to. Thanks. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Mason. Thanks for having me.